Our Lady Help of Christians, which is May 24th, 1802. They were digging in one of the catacombs around Rome, and they found a sealed marble coffin. Now, on it, it said, Lumen Pax Te Cum Fi, which doesn't mean anything. But it wasn't rocket science either, because they looked at it and they go, oh, okay, so the slabs have gotten messed up. There were 3 slabs. So they put them the way they're supposed to be, and it said Pax Te Cum Philomena. Peace be with Philomena. And there were symbols carved into the marble of the coffin. There was the palm fronds of martyrdom. There was the lily of virginity. There was an anchor and some other things, because one of the things they tried to do to martyr her was tie an anchor around her neck and throw her in the Tiber, but it miraculously came off and she got out. And anyway, so they dug this up and they examined it. There was a cardinal who was kind of in charge of the exhuming the things. His name was Cardinal Luigi something or other. What it was. Oh, Luigi Rufo Scilla was the cardinal. And the first thing they did, they opened it up, and inside, of course, were bones, but there were also glass vials. And it was a common practice in the very early centuries of the church to gather as much of the blood of a martyr as you could, put it in a glass vial, which is their equivalent of a jar or a bottle, and bury it with them. Now, so this was obviously, these were vials of her blood. However, old blood, new blood is nice and red, and we know what new blood looks like, but when you get it on your t-shirt or something like that, it quickly turns brown. And then over 1,000 years, it starts looking like dirt clods. You wouldn't even really know it was blood. However, when they took out the particles of blood had been transformed into what appeared to be glittering gems of emerald, ruby, diamond, gold, and silver. And this was attested to by the cardinal in charge of things. So that was the first sign that something was special about this. But what followed was a series of miracles. And it's never stopped. It's never stopped. There are people in this parish who have had miracles because of the devotion to St. Philomena, the blessing with the relic. In Rome, in Mugnano del Cardinale near Naples, there's her shrine. It's where she was taken eventually to be her shrine. They have in Italy, or when you go there and you get a miracle, you buy this little thing that's like a sacred heart, a little silver like a sacred heart. Sometimes they're framed, and you offer it as a sign that you received a miracle. Well, there were so many trainloads of these things that had actually built another building to put them all in, and it goes on to this day. It goes on to this day. Now, what is unusual about St. Philomena? Besides everything, really. But the first thing that's unusual about her, there were no books about her. She's not in the encyclopedia. We have no biography that was written at the time of her martyrdom. Not to say we don't have one. We don't have any writings about her. But because of this flood of miracles, she is the only saint in history to be canonized just because of her miracles. No physical writings about her from the time. We don't have a biography that was written at the time. Nothing. Like take St. Augustine. We know everything about St. Augustine. We have his own writings. We have, the period he lived. We know everything about him from the documentation. Nothing about St. Philomena. So the first unusual thing is, because of this flood of miracles, she became the only saint in history to be canonized. Now, when I said we don't know anything about her from the writings of the time, we have something even better, if you want to put it that way. Better to us, not better to rationalist modernists, okay? Better to us because there are no fewer than 3 saintly Italian mystics who had very lucid visions revealing the life and martyrdom of St. Philomena. Okay, so from 1802 onward, time she was dug up and her coffin opened, we have this flood. Right after that, we have these visions relating to her martyrdom, and we know what we know from that, basically. Now, before you say, oh, well, the visions, it was probably just some hysterical person or, whatever. And, the church knows better than that. They don't get some hysterical housewife who says, some ridiculous thing and say, oh, yeah, well, we're going to believe you right away, right? They go through a kind of a vetting process, and the woman has to be exemplary and of a holy life, and so forth. Well, these revelations, these visions of the women about the life of Saint Philomena were approved by the Holy Office, which is, in the day, the highest office on doctrine. They're the ones who controlled the purity of the doctrine. They dealt with apparitions, they dealt with things like that, okay? So it was approved, they were approved by the Holy Office, so we know what we know of her life from that time. I won't go into her miracles. You can, the place where she is there's a shrine there in Mognano del Cardinale. They have a whole website documenting just a fraction of her more spectacular miracles. People raised from the dead, cured of all kinds of diseases. In particular, one of these is what got her recognized officially by the church. So there were a number of popes who did recognize her. One in particular, the very first one to do anything really official was Gregory XVI. So this woman came to him, and her name was Pauline Marie Jaricot. She came from far away, and she was making a pilgrimage. She was near death. Early 1800s, we don't really know, or mid, we didn't have the equipment we have these days for analyzing such things. But anybody could see she was going to die in a matter of a day or two, something like that. Probably cancer or something. And so she went and she got a meeting with Pope Gregory XVI, I'm sorry, Pope Gregory XVI. And she said, if I go to visit the shrine of St. Philomena, and I'm cured, will you officially recognize her? And he said, sure. And the stories are, he said, sure, because he said, he's going to drop dead on the way. I'm never going to have to, make good on this one. Well, in any case, she went, she was cured, she came back, and to verify everything about her illness, and her cure, the Pope asked her to stay for 1 year in Rome, while every medic available in the world got to check her out. So after that, he gave her recognition, and he confirmed her public veneration and gave a mass in her honor. So he had a mass written in honor of Saint Philomena. Now, just to mention, there was one pope before him who said Philomena is a great saint. That was Leo XII. Then there was Gregory XIII. There was Pope Pius IX. Pope Pius IX gave a special mass and an office in her honor. There are hardly any saints who have offices, meaning a chapter in the breviary that's the office of Saint so-and-so. We can do it generically with saints, but there are very few saints who merit to have an office of their own. He gave her an office of her own. He also, the cross they wear, the popes and bishops, that's called a pectoral cross. On his deathbed, he willed his pectoral cross to the shrine of St. Philomena. And it was placed in the reliquary with her. So Pope Leo XIII, finally Pope Pius IX. Pius X. Pius X, there were people who were starting to criticize St. Philomena. Now, why? I'll tell you why now. They were starting to criticize because look what was happening. Okay, 1802, St. Philomena's bones are discovered. What is going on? Well, we're not 20 years away from the French Revolution. We're not even 30 years away from the founding of this country. What has engulfed Europe is what they call the Enlightenment, which was the Endarkenment, really, but they call it the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a rejection of everything based on faith. And it had to be scientific. In order to pass their test, or they would not believe it. Well, here we have St. Philomena with nothing but, in quotes, tons of miracles to substantiate the fact that she's a saint. So they were starting to balk at that even then. Pius X made a statement about it, and he said in very forceful terms that no one was free to question the existence of St. Philomena based on his apostolic authority. So we have the succession of popes. Now this goes from 1823, so 90 years of them, to 1914, basically. And they produced 19 different papal documents on St. Philomena. Now, so what was gripping Europe was this, we would call it the Enlightenment, the rationalism. At the same time, this was the birth of the part of modernism called rationalism. See, the heresy engulfing the church right now, and I mean the entire church, is poisoned with the heresy of modernism. It was condemned by Pope St. Pius X, but he already said at the time, in 1907 or ish, that it was too little too late. He realized that these heretics were already bishops, already in charge of the seminary. One of the parts of modernism is what we call rationalism. It reduces things of the faith to having to be scientific, or they reject it, okay? Now here's what is most spectacular then about St. Philomena. I want to read you this one thing. Some of you are familiar with Cornelia Ferrer. She's a great speaker and a lovely woman, very, very charming. She's from India and from Mumbai now. And she gave a wonderful talk at one of the things I was at about St. Philomena. And here's what she has to say. She says, "It does seem that God reserved St. Philomena as a remedy for our corrupt times. This is one of the reasons she's one of our important saints." Why? Because as Our Lady of Good Success said, you know, you're going to take down all these visions and stuff like that you're being given. However, it's going to disappear. And it will be rediscovered when the church needs it. In the same way, St. Philomena as a saint and our intercessor and as a heroine of the church and a model disappeared for over 1,000 years to reemerge at a particular time in the church's history. So, it does seem that God reserved St. Philomena as a remedy for our corrupt times. She has been sent to guide us away from the darkness of naturalism and materialism to the supernatural light of the fire of the divine love, which she kindles within our souls. Further, through the power of her intercession, well, I like this line, which is so great that she could be considered the patron saint of everything. Isn't that great? I love it. Who's the patron saint of this? Who's the patron? Don't worry, St. Philomena. Just go there, okay? She gives hope and faith in God to souls surrounded by the despair of atheism and a world descending into barbarism. No wonder this great light, like Our Lady of Fatima, had to be suppressed by the forces of organized naturalism that finally gained control over the church in the 1960s. So here's why she's especially important for us. Are there any 13-year-old kids here? Do we have anybody that's around 13? Okay, come on, stand up. This, young man, okay, this is, maybe if he had a wig on, he would be more like St. Philomena. But this young man is the age that St. Philomena was when she refused to capitulate to the Roman emperor and was killed for it eventually. Now look, you wouldn't think you're very strong, would you? You're really strong. Could you fight the whole Roman Empire? But you can't. See, this is the thing. This girl, almost 2,000 years ago, did. She was your age. And by holding on to the Catholic faith and to God, she defeated the Roman Empire. They couldn't defeat her. They could kill her, but not defeat her. Okay, that's good. I'm glad we had a good prop like you. This is one of the amazing things. But why for our time? Because modernist Rome is another empire. And it's because of the littleness of St. Philomena that she defeated the first Roman Empire. This little saint, and others, you can be a saint, like St. Philomena. Maybe in 1,000 years we might be asking you to pray for us because you became a saint and you decided to choose God instead of everything else that you could choose, okay? And we have that same choice. But she's presented to us because there is a new Roman Empire that is trying to take our faith away from us. And she is the ideal saint to intercede for us in that occasion. Why did she pop up with the rise of modernism? Almost to the year, the rise of modernism and rationalism. And why did God say, there are no coincidence, right now is the time, the Feast of Our Lady Help of Christians, 1802. Why is now the proper time for the saint to be unleashed against Satan? And so now the cat's out of the bag. She's called the great wonder worker of the 19th century just because that's when it started. It didn't mean it finished. I sometimes find this like a discouraging thing. Well, 19th century? We're 2 centuries away from that now. We're in 21st. But that's not what it means. They named her that in the 19th century because there was no other saint whose intercession got as much as St. Philomena's did by far in that period. Now, there were other luminaries as well. However, let's take St. John Vianney. He attributes every one of his miracles to the intercession of St. Philomena. Every single one of them. And you can read about all his miracles. They're just all kinds of stuff. Probably one of my other favorites of his. So he was out of food. They had one lousy little rotten potato left to eat, which he had boiled and tried to cut out the disgusting parts, and there just was almost nothing left. And he prayed, he said, St. Philomena, we have no money, we have no food left. And when he opened the cabinet the next day, the whole bin was full of fresh potatoes, and nobody been in the house, but I think this is one of, I know it sounds like an Irish saint should have done that, but it was St. Philomena, and it was a great meal. But many cures, just other things that happened from the cure by our Saint John Vianney. And he had a statue erected to her, which, if Black Lives Matter hasn't got it, is still in front of his church and ours in France. And it's I've been there, and it's a beautiful testament, because he was a great saint, but in his humility, attributing the miracles that God would have given him, and probably did personally, to someone else, who is the great Saint Philomena. So that's all I really want to say today, is that be aware of Saint Philomena. Bring her into your prayer life. Ask her. The forces of modernism that seek to squash us, they erased her name from the list of saints. Remember, 5 popes, including Pius X, said you're not free to do that. You cannot question the existence of St. Philomena. But because John XXIII was a modernist rationalist, as were the popes since him, they said, well, there's no written documentation to prove the existence of St. Philomena, so we're removing her. So her Mass is gone, her feast day is gone, everything to do with her in the modern church has been erased because of the rationalists who got hold. That happened in 1961. Happily, we don't use the 62 Missal, because even the priests who use the 62 do not have her feast day in there. But we do, and we do her votive Mass. If you have trouble in your life, if you need a miracle, if you need some of what St. Philomena has done through the ages, being the patron saint of everything, then come to the devotions. First Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. 6:30 p.m. God may ask a price. You don't just sit in your house and say, oh Lord, please, I really like this, I'm having this trouble. Oh yeah, okay, bye Lord. Sometimes you have to make a pilgrimage. Sometimes you have to go out of your way. So if coming to the devotions is out of your way, then God accepts that sacrifice and is more disposed to hearing the answers to your prayers. We all have something we have to ask St. Philomena for in our day and age. Please take this as your awareness talk on this great and wonderful saint, and do not fail to include asking for her intercession for whatever it is that you need. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen.